This is DeMatteis, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
Welcome, loony listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast. This is a retrospective bonus episode, if you will, and it is the beginning of a series of episodes that I will re-release of interviews with the famous Moon Knight alumni. So, for those loony listeners that may have missed these interviews in the years that have gone by, I'll present them here for you as a nice little recap. I had the great fortune of speaking to many Moon Knight creators and writers and artists, so I wanted to share it again for, as I said, for newer listeners. This one tonight is the first of three that was originally released in our 100th episode, and we'll kick off with this. I'll release this every fortnight or so. Just to kind of tide things over into the festive break. But this first interview was alongside podcaster Anthony Sitko. Some of you will know him as an Amiga level loony and co-host of Capes on the Couch, a very cool podcast. I absolutely love it. Go check it out if you haven't. But we both had the opportunity to speak to DeMatteis, and we spent some time chatting with James, just to talk about not only that, but just comics in general. And it was a bit of a recall for James DeMatteis to remember that run, because it was a while ago, and he's such a prolific writer. There's so much that's happened between then and now. So anyway, I'll present this to you, the loony listener. I hope you enjoy our interview with James DeMatteis. Yes, welcome, loony listeners. This is Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast, episode 100. And we did promise some surprises on the show. So to kick off, we have a very special interview with a very special writer. I'm sure many of you have heard of him. But before I get too carried away, I'm actually also joined by Anthony Sitko, co-host of Capes on the Couch, where comics get counselling, a absolutely awesome podcast. Anthony, how are you?
I'm doing good, Ray. I am very, very excited to be part of this interview, and I cannot wait.
Oh, this should be a cracker. As many of you know, Anthony is an Omega-level loony. He is a massive Moon Knight fan, so I could not ignore having him on for this interview. And we do have a very special guest. I'd like you to introduce James DeMatteis. James, how are you?
I'm great, guys. How are you both doing?
Yeah, good.
Fantastic.
It's been quite a buzz to get to organise this chat with you. So just briefly, I wanted to let the loonies out there. I mean, look, your name is synonymous with a lot of comics, a legend in the field. James DeMatteis, you've started off as a music critic, I believe. You went to comic writing. Yep.
Actually, I was a musician first, then a music journalist. And
yeah, that's right. I did read up on that as well. You've released a few things as well.
Yeah, I did.
Anyway, comic book writing, various publishers, of course, the big two, DC, Marvel, as well as a few other publishers as well.
And many years writing animation as well.
And animation, yes. And many awards to a lot of. I mean, you are, if anything, industrious. A lot of original graphic novels, the likes of Brooklyn Dreams, and of course Moonshadow.
Which I have to plug. A brand new hardcover edition of Moonshadow comes out Wednesday.
Oh, fantastic!
Hardcover, lots of extras in the back. I mean, it's the most beautiful edition of Moonshadow that's ever been done.
Yeah, I've seen the photo on your Twitter account, the definitive edition, right?
And that's what it's called.
Excellent. And a new forward by yourself. or introduction?
Yes, and then all kinds of cool stuff in the back. I don't save files on a lot of things, but I saved all my Moonshadow stuff all these years. So I have like handwritten notes from when I first had the idea. Things really going back, and all of John J. Muth's sketches and wonderful things. So it's packed with extras, and it's on beautiful paper, beautiful hardcover. They did a fantastic job.
Oh, well, that sounds fantastic. We'll grab the details up. They'll be in our show notes. Just check it out, Loonies. Definitely well worth a purchase. But, of course, as well, JMU, you conduct a writer's workshop called Imagination 101. You're a founder of Creation Point, all to do with assisting with creative writers. Is that correct?
Right. Imagination 101 is a writing workshop that I do periodically. I have one coming up in November, and I've had people come from all over the United States and actually from other countries as well. It's an entire weekend, very intimate weekend. I keep the classes small, maybe 10 people at most. And we have a great weekend talking about both the mechanics and the day-to-day realities of writing, as well as the whole sort of metaphysical aspect of story and where it all comes from. It's a great weekend, and if anyone, whether you're in New Jersey or Australia, if you want to come, there's still a few spots open in the class, so I welcome you. And it happens this coming November. Right. And the other one, the story consultation, is basically done long distance. Anyone that has a piece of work that they want to work on, you can go to my website and contact me, and we can get to work.
Would that include like prose, scripts as well, or any different formats?
Pretty much anything you want to work on within reason. If it's something that's like out of my purview, I'm not gonna work on it with you because I won't be able to help you. But in general, because whether it's a screenplay or a comic book script or a piece of prose, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, again, we'll add these to our show notes as well, so all information will be there. I know a lot of loonies, a fair few of them do love their fan fiction and do write as well, so maybe this is something they can pursue. It's a good way to kind of broaden your horizons with something that you love to do.
So before we get started, I want to get all the plugs out of the way.
Sure, of course.
Just from IDW, just put out a collection of a series I did for them called Impossible Incorporated, which I'm very excited about. I just finished a series at Dark Horse for Burger Books called The Girl in the Bay, and the collected edition of that will be out in August. What else? The Constantine animated movie, John Constantine animated movie, is available for streaming on Amazon and Google Play, and you can buy it on DVD and Blu-ray, so that's out there. And there's a lot more animation coming up that I can't talk about yet. But so those are all right. Plugs are out of the way. Let's talk.
Oh no, that's great. No, have you watched the? I hadn't watched it myself. There was a Constantine TV show, a live one.
There was a live action Constantine TV show with Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I heard it.
Which was pretty good. And then that's Matt Ryan is the voice of Constantine in the animated movie that I wrote.
Ah, lovely.
So it's one of the best animated projects I've ever been involved in, and it's probably, out of all the portrayals of Constantine outside of comics, I think it's the truest to the Vertigo vision of the character.
Okay.
Very proud of the project. And now, of course, Matt Ryan is on Legends of Tomorrow, still continuing his Constantine.
Reprising his role. Look, truth be told, I'm not a DC fan. That's just out of, circumstance. You are forgiven. No, I mean, like, I always kind of liken it to, because I do love my music, like classical music and jazz, and I do study classical music, and it's a world unto itself, and it's similar with like Marvel and DC, I find. So it just happens, But I do love the character of Constantine. There was that early movie with Keanu Reeves. I thought it was really cool.
Right.
I've heard, obviously, not as accurate, or not accurate at all, to the Vertigo portrayal, but still an enjoyable thing. So, I'll be down.
We did an episode on Constantine.
Oh yes, Anthony, you did.
Yeah, we did. We covered Constantine in an entire episode. Actually, in the comics, it's pronounced Constantine, but everybody seems to have. At least in the Keanu Reeves version, they definitely Americanized it, and I guess for the sake of the American audiences, Matt Ryan pronounces it Constantine, but he makes a point.
I even wrote the character in the comics. I never knew it was pronounced Constantine.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Wow. I learned something. Good, we're done. I can go now.
we love to share. Yeah, well, actually, before we get into Moon Knight, of course, JM, we actually had another loony who wanted to come on. I wanted to give him a shout out, Josh. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it. He's another huge fan of yours, and he had a question that he wanted me to put forth to you, and let it be known, loonies, that not only that short run that you did with Moon Knight, but you had extensive runs with the Defenders, Captain America. You did that very memorable in Shambhala, Doctor Strange.
That's right, and I had a run on the monthly Doctor Strange book as well. Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh, okay. And of course, Spider-Man. Synonymous with arguably the greatest Spider-Man storyline ever written, which is Kraven's Last Hunt, which I'm sure you've read as well, Anthony.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I mean, yeah,
amazing story. I'm hoping one day that we can see a live action Kraven in perhaps the MCU, or that was never covered in Raimi's. You can't start off with Kraven's Last Hunt, obviously, but you have to build to it. But I would very much be intrigued at that, just because the storyline of Kraven, and also I love stories in which the villain kind of wins, or at least gets that upper hand.
I think the problem with the live action Kraven, and maybe is that your lead character, the guy that you're paying $20 million to be Spider-Man, is buried alive for a third of the story. So I always thought it would be great. Like, I've written a bunch of these DC animated movies, and I thought Kraven's Last Hunt done as an animated movie, I think would be great. Perfect.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I'm ready to write it whenever Marvel's ready.
Yeah, we'll read it as soon as you write it.
Are you listening, Marvel? Are you listening?
I hope so.
Get him on it.
I am writing for the new. Marvel has a new Spider-Man animated show, and I've written 3 episodes of that. And I can't get into details, but one of them does feature Moon Knight.
Oh my God!
I'll just drop that there for you.
Oh, that's a scoop. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, lovely. Oh, okay.
That's all I can say about it, though, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
That's fair.
That's fine. Yeah, we respect
I appreciate
that.
it.
But that's pricked our ears, so that's very cool indeed. So obviously Kraven's Last Hunt, but also there were a couple of seminal issues that you wrote in Amazing Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man. And anyway, I'm going to read this out to you, JM. It's a question from Josh, and
okay.
He basically said, you've written 2 massive milestones in the early 90s, Amazing Spider-Man 400 and Spectacular Spider-Man 200. And Josh says one of them, I believe it was the Amazing Spider-Man 400, or maybe the other one, was his all-time favorite comic. Anyway, they deal with the death of Aunt May and Harry Osborn, respectively. Now, his question is what was it like to have the task of killing off 2 monumental and long-standing Spider-Man supporting characters? I mean, that's quite a big brushstroke there, James. So, how did you feel about that? Was that nerve-wracking to pitch that, or?
No, not nerve-wracking at all. When the Aunt May death was not just my decision, but it came from a few of us, because the Spider-Man books were going through a sort of a revolution then with the Clone Saga, and what we wanted people to know, that the stakes were high, and that we were going to do things that were going to make a big difference. Little knowing that Aunt May would be back, 15 minutes later. But at the time, the idea was we're killing Aunt May, and that's that. And so but once you get into the story, you're not thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm killing Aunt May, or oh my gosh, I'm killing Harry. You're just getting into the story and immersing yourself in the characters and following the characters where they will lead you. There's that moment in Amazing Spider-Man 400 where May admits that she's known for years that Peter is Spider-Man.
Yes.
And that came not from oh, what a great idea, Aunt May knows. It was almost like Aunt May told me, if you know what I mean. When the story is really working, the characters are revealing themselves to you as you're writing the story. And certainly Aunt May did that in that story. And with Harry, that was the culmination of a 2-year storyline. And I didn't know when that storyline, same thing, I didn't know when that storyline started. It's not like I mapped it out and said, in 2 years, we're going to kill Harry off and it's going to happen this way.
Yeah.
It just sort of evolved and came to this bubbling climax. And again, the characters led me to that point. So I'm not like thinking, oh my gosh, I'm killing an iconic character or anything like that. I'm just so deep in the story that I'm following the story and the characters where they lead me. And those are two of my favorite stories that I've ever worked on Spider-Man. In fact, both of them, but the Harry story at Spectacular 200, if I had to pick just a single issue of Spider-Man that I wrote, not an arc, but a single issue, that would be the one that's my favorite.
Oh, right. That's great, because we did cover that. What we do have on the show is what we like to call the Olara sessions, and they're kind of like Desert Island books, and we had Josh on, and obviously one of them was Spectacular Spider-Man 200, and we went through it like panel by panel. It was
really?
it was fantastic. It was a really good read, and it was a double-sized issue, so a substantial read, which was good. Yeah,
and so much of the credit for that, I have to say, goes to Sal Buscema, who did such an extraordinary job with the artwork. I've told this story before, but it's worth telling again, and I'll keep it short so we can get to Moon Knight. The end of the story, there's like 3 or 4 pages at the end when Harry dies, and it's very moving and very emotional. And in my plots, this is written plot first, so I write a detailed plot. Sal draws it, and then I dialogue from the artwork. And I thought when the artwork comes back, I'm going to have to really sell this. I'm going to have to really schmaltz it up in the captions and, and really kind of reach out and grab your heart and twist it and turn it. Yeah. And I got the artwork back, and everything I'd asked for in the plot was there in the art. And if you look at the story, the last 3 pages, there's not a single word there, because despite the fact that I thought I would have to write so much, I looked at Sal's art and it communicated everything I asked for so perfectly that I just shut up and let the art tell the story. And that speaks so much to what a huge talent, and often underrated talent, Sal Buscema is. Just one of the best artists to ever at Marvel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would have been one of the highest kind of accolades, I guess, you can give the artist as a writer. Like, okay, I'm not going to touch it at all. I mean, you've pretty much done it. So that's fantastic. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And that's the beauty of working in a visual medium like that is you can allow the pictures, they say a picture says, is worth 1,000 words. And in this case, it very literally is true that you felt the need that dialogue was superfluous.
And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you turn in your plot and it's all very detailed and you think it's all very clear, and the artwork comes back and it's like, I don't know what the hell's going on this page. And you have to actually overwrite to explain what's happening in the pictures. Yeah. And that's the difference between someone who really doesn't understand the art of visual storytelling and someone like Sal, who is such a master of it.
Yeah, no, that's, it amazes me, like layouts and stuff. There's this thing on YouTube, it's Strip Panel Naked. I'm not sure if you've seen it, JM. It goes through particular issues, and one of them was Moon Knight. It was a Warren Ellis and Declan Shalvey issue 5, which is a fantastic issue. Anyway, it goes, it's narrated by someone. It goes through panel by panel, and it shows the level of thought that these artists do put into it, not only to convey the story, but to kind of lead the eye, stuff like that. It's really amazing stuff.
Yeah, it really, really is. And it's so, when you understand it, when you see the importance of, say, capturing just the right moment, and each panel has to capture the right moment, and it has to flow into the next panel. And if you capture the wrong moment, the whole thing is off. If the gesture is wrong, and the really great artists, if you really watch them, you'll see like one gesture will lead your eye to the next panel. It has to flow,
absolutely.
And yet each little piece, each panel has to be really, really clear.
Yes.
And when you're working with guys like, we talk about Craven's Last Hunt, someone like Mike Zack, where visually, anything I asked for in the plot visually was right there, and it was clear as a bell. I never had to explain the art. I never had, the emotion was on the character's faces. I didn't have to explain that, which is why when you read Craven's Last Hunt, it's all interior monologue.
Yes.
Everything is what's going on inside the characters' heads. I didn't have to stop and explain, I am now leaping to this roof, or any stuff like that, which sometimes you actually have to do that. You'll see things like that, because it's not clear in the pictures. So when you're working with a Zack or a Buscema, if someone else had drawn Craven's Last Hunt and I had to be explaining the artwork as I went along, none of that interior monologue stuff would have been there, or it wouldn't have worked the same way. So it so much depends upon that sort of chemical fusion between the writer and the artist.
Oh, absolutely. And I'd like to actually put it to you then as well, James. Like, nowadays, like who would you, if you had a choice, who you could pick as an artist to do, I don't know, your latest and greatest story, who would you choose?
I've been very lucky. I've worked with so many great artists, people that, really just amazing top of the line artists. Mm-hmm. And yet I'm always surprised by the talent of new artists. Like I said, I just finished this series for Berger Books. Yes. And there's a young woman named Corinne Howell, and I'd never heard of her before. Karen Berger found her and put her on this book. She's in her early 20s. She's phenomenal. She's so gifted, Yeah. And it was such a pleasure to discover, I still want to work with all the guys that I know and have worked with before, but to discover somebody new, it's just a fantastic thing. And I'm thinking, well, she's probably 23 at most. Yeah. What is she? What kind of work is she going to be doing in 10 years? Because she's so good now. Yeah. And so it's not a question of, I guess there's still plenty of guys out there. Yeah. If I was going to pick one dream artist to work with, and he doesn't work in comics anymore, I don't know what he's doing these days, Barry Windsor Smith. Oh, I've always loved his stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So, just off the charts, brilliant.
Very good.
But that's just a fantasy because it doesn't even work in comics anymore. But God, to do one story with Barry Smith, that would be really something.
Yeah,
But I've worked with so many amazing artists, that I can't even begin to list them. Yeah. Even just talking about the projects that I've mentioned, you look at Moonshadow, John J. Muth. Oh my God, look at that painted artwork. There had never been anything like that in comics. This Impossible Incorporated with my buddy Mike Cavallero. He's amazing and works in so many different styles and pencils and inks and letters and colors. He does it all, There's the talent that's out there. It's really extraordinary. It's really amazing. And to this day, it's the same as when I was reading a comic book when I was 10 years old and you turn the page and gape at the artwork. I'm still in awe of the artists. And when new art comes through and, I open my email and there's new pages there, I'm a 10-year-old kid and I am in awe of these guys and what they do.
That's just a good feeling, isn't it? To have that kind of
it's great.
That feeling you had when you're small, when you're little. Yeah, great. Look, we're going to delve into Moon Knight now. Now, your run was short, as we discussed earlier on. It was 26 to 31, and it mainly encapsulated the Scarlet redemption, which a lot of loonies they absolutely love. And this is one of the reasons we have the fantastic Anthony here with us. Anthony, I'm going to throw it to you to kick us off here, to ask something to JM about his writing.
This run above, and I have literally every solo comic that Moon Knight has done, every single one of his solo issues, pretty much 90% of the appearances that he's made. And I referenced this when I met you last year at Comic-Con. This is my all-time favorite Moon Knight story arc of all of them throughout the 40 years of the character. Your writing and Ron Garney's artwork and everything just melded together so beautifully that
Ron Garney was brand new then. He was just starting out. He wasn't Ron Garney yet, and you know what I mean? And he came out of the gate really strong.
Yeah, because I remember he started. Sorry, Anthony, just quickly. I remember seeing Ron when I got that issue as well back in the 90s, and it just surprised me. Like I was following the Charles Soule Daredevil run, and it's like, oh, that's Ron Garney. He's still going. So, yeah.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's better than ever, yeah.
Oh, he's great. Yeah, fantastic. Sorry, Anthony.
No, that's fine. So, but I want to segue into that. There is a beautiful mirror set up to so many of the issues, particularly in part 3, where between Marlene and Scarlet and their love for Mark, and you open up the pages, and one side is Marlene, and you see images of the Khonshu statue, and then on the other page, it's Scarlet, and you see images of a crucifix and everything, and there's this mirror to them. Was that your idea that was written into the script, or was that
all in the plot?
Idea?
That was all in the plot. Those kind of visual touchstones were all in the plot. But again, as we were saying before, give that to the wrong artist, and it ain't going to work. You know what I mean? Ron made sure that it all worked and worked really well.
Yeah.
But those kind of parallels and visual touchstones and contrasts were all there in the plot.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah. And like with this this arc of the Scarlet redemption as well. I guess another question, and this is off the back of another one from Josh. He asked about was there any intent to stay there any longer, like, or was there? Was it just
I'm sure the intent was to stick around, and I honestly don't remember why I left the book. There was no problem. I was working with, I believe, Danny Fingeroth, one of my favorite editors and dearest friends in the business, and it might be that I just got really, really busy with other stuff, and had to make a choice and let that one go. Yeah. But I got to tell a good solid story, at least before I left.
You certainly did. I mean, you certainly picked some very interesting characters in the Moon Knight canon as well. I mean, as you mentioned, Anthony, Stained Glass Scarlet, and the comparisons that you see there with Marlene and the symbolisms. Was there a particular reason why you picked Stained Glass? Was it because?
Well, what I remember is just because I was not wildly familiar with Moon Knight when they asked me to take over the book, so I'm sure that they gave me a stack of issues, and I went back and reread stuff, and just something about that character reached out to me. Yeah. It's some intuitive thing where I went, this one, there's something about this woman that I find fascinating. Yeah. And so, and my thought is always, let's peel off the top of the character's head and then dig deep into their psyche and find what's going on in there. Why do these characters do what they do? What is there in their past that drove them to become what they are now? And that's, as I recall, and again, it's been a long time, that's what I did with that character.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think as well that her as a character lends itself. I mean, her relationship with Moon Knight was kind of set up by Doug Mensch, and it was always a slightly... I don't know, how would you describe it, Anthony? It was a very, I don't want to say vague, but they seem to have a connection, but it was never really explained. And that ambiguity, I think, runs through the Scarlet Redemption story, that you handle as well. And you have this thing of, are they interested in each other? Are they not? One of the things that Josh... he mentioned as well, one of his favourite scenes is when Moon Knight and Scarlet are on top of the bridge and they share a kiss, and then she stabs him and then she, pushes him off. This is really consistent with her character, because she was very similar to that in the Doug Mensch run. But I think also, if we go back to Kraven's Last Hunt as well, and the way that was written, there seems to be a very introspective way that your style of writing, which I found very relevant, I guess, to the character of Scarlet. So I guess I was just wondering if that kind of played into why you picked her. Yeah,
she seemed ripe for an interior exploration, and again, just as it was with Kraven, there's sort of a visual story going on. But as I recall, that story was very interior and very much about what was going on inside the characters as the outer action was happening. It's funny, you mentioned that kiss on top of the bridge, and until you described it, I didn't realize it. You guys watch Game of Thrones?
Yes. Oh, yes. Anthony, yep.
That climactic scene, if I don't want to get into it, if anyone hasn't seen it, where there's a kiss and then you pull back and he's stabbed her.
Yes, yeah.
It's the same scene.
That is, isn't it?
And I didn't realize that until you mentioned it. That's very funny.
Yeah,
that's very funny.
No, it was a very good scene, indeed.
I think that's the one. It's funny because it's been a long time since I wrote that story, but that's the scene that's like branded in my brain that I really, really clearly remember. And him under the water, and I remember we played a lot with negative space and stuff in the sequence of him, Mark, coming back up from under the water, and there'd be blank panels, and then panels with just words, and
Well, I mean, there was we can talk about Anthony, about literary references. I know you've mentioned.
Yeah, there are so many literary references throughout the arc, particularly William Blake, both in the narration and then inside their thoughts. How did you find those references, and how did you decide which ones were pertinent enough to make it into the script?
That's a great question, and I will probably have to make up an answer because I don't remember. So I remember referencing William Blake. Well, I love Blake. I mean, so Blake shows up in Craven's Last Hunt, and I think his stuff is incredibly poetic, very, very mystical. It has layers and levels of meaning to it. And I think probably in the writing it just applied very naturally. I don't seek out these things like, let me look for a literary reference. I go to the things that I know and that I love and that fit. And Blake is someone that I've loved since high school. It's so funny because just this morning I was on Amazon looking at collections of Blake, thinking, I need a new collection of Blake, because I have the same one sitting on my shelf that I got when I was like 17. So it was just a natural thing for me to infuse that quality in there, because it's just a poet that I love, whose work resonates in such a way that it could be applied across, to these stories.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And every reference that was in there was so on the nose, and it worked. And I guess just I suppose as a writer, you not only write, but you read everything you can get your hands on. And so you would have this well of knowledge and references things that you've seen before, and you say, okay, this would fit here and this would fit there. So I guess that it sort of makes sense to hear you describe it. I was just, like I said, curious where. It's
interesting because I realize as you're saying this, Blake shows up in Craven, Blake shows up here, Blake shows up in the very first issue of Moonshadow as well.
Wow,
so,
okay, yeah.
So I wonder if I have to think now. I wonder if it's a theme that runs through a lot more stories that I'm not even aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That you don't know that how much of an influence he has had on you, which is an interesting question as well. Just further to what Anthony's talking about, the references, past and present writers. Who would you say, some of your favourites, and who, apart from Blake, I guess, are influential in your work?
Love and adore Ray Bradbury. Right up there. If I have my pantheon of literary gods and I had little statues on a prayer table or something, Bradbury would be right there.
Oh, wow.
I love Charles Dickens. I've been rereading Dickens recently and reading some Dickens that I had never read before. And as time goes by, I love his work even more. And another writer, a lot of these are writers that I discovered when I was a teenager or a young adult, and it says something about the quality of the work when it can sustain you and stay with you through your whole life. Because certain writers you love when you're young, you revisit them and it's like, oh, that was fun, but I don't need to ever read that again, But Bradbury and Dickens, and I've been rereading Kurt Vonnegut. I love Kurt Vonnegut. I've been rereading a bunch of Vonnegut lately.
I'm familiar with who's what works.
Kurt Vonnegut?
Yeah.
Slaughterhouse-Five, Cat's Cradle, Sirens of Titan.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, you should read God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, one of my favorite books of all time. If I would recommend two books of Vonnegut, I'd recommend God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater and Slaughterhouse-Five.
Wow, okay.
Which was made into a very odd movie back in the 70s. Yeah. Oh, Vonnegut is an incredible writer. Oh my gosh.
American?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very timeless. We read quite a bit of Vonnegut in high school. It's unfortunate that I don't recall much of what it is that I read, but I do recall he made a cameo appearance in Back to School, the movie, the Rodney Dangerfield film.
Right.
About
That's right.
It was a very metatextual reference where he was hired to discuss and analyze Kurt Vonnegut books, and Rodney Dangerfield's character disagreed with Vonnegut's interpretation of his own writing, which was the joke. So,
right. Yeah, I would highly recommend Vonnegut. And gosh, so many other wonderful writers, that I've read over the years. But J.D. Salinger, love. J.D. Salinger.
Yeah.
Oh God, 9 Stories. Franny and Zoe is one of my favorite books of all time, and Philip K. Dick, the science fiction writer.
Yes.
Although I hate to type him as a science fiction writer because his work just explodes the genre so much.
Yes.
Fantastic. There would be no movie like The Matrix and all that followed without Philip K. Dick's work back in the 50s and the 60s. So many more.
Yeah.
And comic book writers, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, obviously, and I include Kirby as a writer, not just as an artist. Steve Gerber. When I was a teenager reading comics, Steve Gerber's work meant so much to me, and he's another one who kind of took the genre and exploded it in so many incredible directions. Len Wein, who was my first real mentor in the business when I started writing comics, had a huge influence on me, even more as an editor, as my editor than as a writer. And he was an amazing writer. I mean, Swamp Thing with Wein and Wrightson still remains some of my favorite comics of all time.
Yep.
And again, so many more. I could, if we could spend an hour just talking about, oh yeah, there was that, and what about Jim Starlin's Warlock, and what about Tomb of Dracula, and what about all that stuff. But those are the ones that come to mind immediately.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I mean, they're all fantastic. They're all good.
Your assignment though is to go read some Kurt Vonnegut now. You have to.
I am. I'm interested now.
I demand it of you.
You've piqued my interest, so I'm gonna hunt him down. I'm gonna just. Trying to get old school, get a real book as well. So
a real book, right? That's right.
Look, just one other thing I wanted to ask as well, Jam, about the writing again. Bringing it into context with Mark Spector, Moon Knight. So Chuck Dixon wrote, thereabouts the first 24 issues. I think there was one written by Howard Mackie, starring Ghost Rider as well. But Chuck Dixon...
I know Howard followed me on the book, I believe, as well, yeah.
Oh, okay, yes. He's a great writer as well. I really like his stuff, particularly with Ghost Rider. But anyway, so Chuck Dixon handled the first 24 issues or so, and he's been on record as well as saying that there was an editorial choice to portray Moon Knight a particular way. Hence, I guess the title Mark Spector, Moon Knight, just concentrate on that one identity, maybe concentrate more on his mercenary past, and I guess his crime fighting as a caped crusader. Now, after his 24 issues, we get the Scarlet Redemption, which kind of turned things on its head. And I just was wondering, how was that taken, like with the editors, when you pitched the Scarlet Redemption? Was it something they were looking for, like
No. I was just asked if I wanted to write the book, and I agreed, and then, like, as I said, immersed myself and read a bunch of back issues. And then, Danny Fingeroth is someone that we have a great relationship, and he really trusted me, and I trusted him. And he just let me write the story that I wanted to write. There was no editorial direction at all, saying you must do this or go this way or go that way at all. I just told the story that I wanted to tell. And I had a lot of freedom on that story, a lot of freedom.
Yeah, certainly, because we actually do see a lot of the relationship of Mark and Khonshu, like in that arc, which you don't actually see that much in the Dixon kind of run through. It's pretty much.
Well, I'm always attracted to the mystical side of things and the spiritual side of things, and when you have a character like that, I think you have to explore that. It's there in the character,
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned it just a little bit earlier as well. One of the strongest scenes I thought were the underwater ones as well. Just that kind of, I don't know, the vibe of him in there. Was really, really, really memorable. And him dealing with his dad and some other apparitions that come that way.
I was going to add that that this run delved into a lot of that spiritual connection with Khonshu that really wasn't utilized that much in this Moon Knight era. We see nowadays, particularly following the Charlie Houston bottom run, that Khonshu takes a much more active role in Mark's life and Moon Knight's crime fighting, so to speak, as a more active participant. But in that era, Khonshu wasn't nearly as involved as the sort of looming specter, no pun intended. But your run really, I guess, was sort of like a precursor to a lot of the stuff that we see nowadays, where Khonshu is a supporting member of the cast. So that's, I guess, very prescient of you to be able to say, okay, I want to include Khonshu as this force, this character in the story, years before it became commonplace.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, as I said, I'm very, very interested in not just the psychological, but the spiritual dimensions of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a character like that who is directly connected to a god,
Yes,
I'm going to want to explore that.
Yeah,
it's just in my nature. Someone else, it might be like, I don't want to go there. That's not interesting to me. I want to make him be more like Batman or whatever.
Yes.
But that aspect of the character fascinated me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that they gave you that freedom to do it, because it ends up being one of the most memorable runs in Mark Spector Moon Knight. So really,
what's astonishing to me, I have to say, why I'm really enjoying this conversation. It was a short run, and I really never heard much of anything about it over the years. That's why even last year when you came up to me at New York Comic Con, I was like, really? That's so cool, because I don't really hear about it, and to hear that you not just enjoyed those stories, but that you really consider them something special is very gratifying for me all these years later to hear that.
Yeah.
That's why it was such a big thing for me to meet you at Comic-Con, because, like I said, I had gotten Ron Garney's autograph on the books. I got Bill Sienkiewicz because he did all the covers. I even was able to track down Danny Fingeroth, who was at Comic-Con last year. And then I said, JM DeMatteis is here. I will do whatever. We set my wife and her friend, neither of whom give two hoots about Moon Knight, sat through the entire panel with me as I sat there just enraptured, because I said, I'm going to meet JM DeMatteis.
So you didn't really care what we were talking about on the panel. You were just waiting to get those books signed.
Oh, no, I was absolutely interested in everything that you were talking about. And I left there very intrigued by, I think it was the Burger Books panel.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yep. And I left there very interested in some of the books, but it was just more that I'm in the same room as J.M. DeMatteis, and oh my God, I'm going to have him write these books. It was such a geek out moment for me personally. So thank you for that.
What I'm saying is, I really appreciate the love that you feel for this story. It means something to me. So thank you as well.
Oh, look, it's one of those things that is continuing to bring pleasure to a lot of fans, people that are just finding out about Moon Knight as well. Which is a great thing, to actually read these stories that were written before, and they still hold relevance to a lot of people. So thank you as well for writing such great stuff.
Well, I mean, now as we're talking about it, it'd be great if Marvel would collect that story, wouldn't it be?
It would. Well, I'm eyeing the Epic collections. I'm hoping that they'll collect Mark Spector Moon Knight. That hasn't been reprinted anywhere. And I'm hoping that will be part of it. I mean, it has to be part of it. It's in there, right smack bang in the middle. But
here's the good news. Marvel is like exploiting every character they can. It's only a matter of time before there's a Moon Knight movie or TV show, and once that happens, they'll reprint everything.
Yeah. We just got to wait. Play the waiting game.
Yeah.
JM, look, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you as well. I mean, thank you so much, Anthony. It's been really good. Thank you for coming on. Look, it's always great to chat with you. We should get you on the show.
My friend.
Yeah, more. I'm sorry. Like, the little fella's crying up a storm, so I might have to take leave. But before we go, JM, where can people find you, or where can people contact you?
You can find me on Twitter, and on Facebook, and at my website, jmdmatteis.com. So between those three things, you can track me down. And I have to say that I really enjoy the contacts with the people that read and enjoy my work on Twitter and on Facebook. I know a lot of people have very negative experiences on social media. I have basically had nothing but positive experiences with the fans, and it's a really nice opportunity to connect with people. So feel free to pop up on Twitter and say hello, or come on over to Facebook or my website, and I will try to answer everybody that contacts me.
Yeah, that's really accommodating as well, because as a fan, to social media, it's a revelation, is it, to be able to actually contact someone that you look up to, someone that you follow, and to actually interact with them is amazing. So,
and it's just as important for us as creators to have that interaction, because I always say we spend most of our time alone in a room playing with our imaginary friends, and it's nice to have a connection with those people that are reading and enjoying our work. And maybe, once in 1,000 times some weird person pops up, but it doesn't matter, because 99 and 9/10% of the time, really, really nice people, and it's nice to have that connection and contact.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, excellent. Well, on that note, thank you once again. All of everything that we discussed will be in the show notes. Just check it out, Loonies. As mentioned, please check out James' Moonshadow, the definitive edition. That is, that's coming out early June.
That'll be out on Wednesday.
Okay. So
I'll repeat all the plugs. The Moonshadow comes out on Wednesday. Impossible Incorporated is out now in a trade paperback. Girl in the Bay trade paperback will be out in August, and my workshop will be in November. I've covered it all.
Great. Thank you very much. And
all right, thanks, guys. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, James. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
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 Looney listeners, you can contact Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, on email at itkmoonnight@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook with a Facebook page and group, and on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Discord, Get Vocal, as well as on our website, intothenight.libsyn.com. You can also check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/itkmoonnight. Please consider checking out the bonus incentives, and any contribution will help us expand the show. A big thanks to sponsors Hello Headphones, empowering gamers to play their best. Use the code ITKMoonnight and get 10% off their online store. Also, a big thanks to Dreamland Comics. Use their code MOON and get a big 20% off their online store. We're also an affiliate member to Entertainment Earth. Please use the links to purchase any of your toy action figure needs, and each purchase helps support the show. We're a big part of The Collective, a band of a few like-minded podcasters, and please check out the links in our show notes for access to all their shows. Alternatively, you can type in hashtag TheCollectiveNet on Twitter to see all the shows and all their tweets. Finally, if you'd like to review our show, please do so on Apple Podcasts or on Podchaser. This will help us get out there just a little bit more, and any loonies who don't know the show will be able to tune in. As always, take care, and may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Material used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners. Any reproduction of any properties of Marvel is solely for entertainment use only.